for the active president.
Okay.
And Donald Trump is a former president.
Right.
He has Secret Service protection, and he'll have it all his life, okay, whether he wins this next time or not. So just like Jimmy Carter, just like Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, all the former presidents, George W. Bush, they all have a certain number of Secret Service agents guarding them. But when they are in a campaign like this, Donald Trump obviously has more protection. And then they also ask the local authorities, can you add to our protection? So the inner circle, that, you know, they have an inner and outer circle. And usually what they do, the agent in charge, special agent in charge, will say to the local police, can you guys cover this area? And the Secret Service is still responsible, but they extend a request for help because they're not, I mean, we're not talking about 1,000 Secret Service agents guarding every rally. We don't have that capability. And they usually make a map and they say, okay, how far out do we need coverage? Now, the man who shot the assassinate, the guy who did the assassination, was up on a roof, and he's called a counter sniper, and basically he's looking around as much as he's able to find where he would have to shoot a sniper, which he eventually did. I mean, he did it very quickly. As soon as that man shot from the roof, the counter sniper from the Secret Service killed him. But obviously too late to prevent that shot getting off.
Yes.
So there was a breakdown of that one particular roof. And when somebody says, how could a 20-year-old who has no real experience be able to do this? Well, remember, when you're in a defensive situation, you don't know what the offender can see. I mean, he's looking for where is there a hole? And so he sees this place up on the roof. There's nobody up there. There's nobody blocking him from getting up there. And he takes advantage of all the advantage is his. Now, if it had been covered, he might have said, I'll try this another day, you know. But I am sure that there have been plenty of situations where people like him have showed up at rallies and they were looking for an opportunity. And obviously every vantage point was closed and they couldn't make use of it. On this particular case, somebody broke down their coverage, whether it was a Secret Service, especially, that didn't check to see if the local police had that covered, or if there was an officer, a couple of officers who neglected getting up on that roof or being by that building. But the coverage broke down. And it just took that one instance, that one moment. So nobody should be, Secret Service are human beings. I mean, all agencies fail at some point. You know, they're not the Holy Spirit. They're not everywhere. And in this case, they weren't there on that roof. And I don't think there's any conspiracy about it, except in this one young man who somehow decided he was going to try to take Trump out. And it was just really providential that Trump turned his head. I mean, he got shot in the ear. If his head had been turned a little bit different, he would be dead.
Now, I find that to be, all I can say to something like that is wow, because I saw him when he came into the Republican National Convention last night. I watched the entire convention, and he didn't say a whole lot. He was pumping his fist. We have no idea how this near assassination could change him or is changing him. But they were saying last night that they put the camera right on his face because they felt it looked like the tears were coming down his cheek, and they were looking at his son. So you're right. Had he said he normally speaks directly into the microphone, and the fact that he turned
Hmm.
Is there something providential here? Something we should be looking at?
Well, yeah, and the question is, was it God or is it the devil? You know,
Hmm.
is he the Antichrist who, like Revelation talks about him sort of almost coming back from the dead? You
Hmm.
know, uh, I mean, God is sovereign. God has a plan. He has a plan for Donald Trump, and he has a plan for our country.
Yeah.
Um, the question is it a plan of blessing or is it a plan of judgment? You know, and your political views might influence how you feel about that. Um, Obviously, the Lord is not done with Donald Trump, and whether or not Donald Trump will humble himself before God and say, "Thank you, Lord, for saving my life," and become a more humble man, that's yet to be seen. Obviously, everybody knows Trump is a narcissist. You know,
Hmm.
he it's always all about him,
Hmm.
and you know, to realize if it wasn't for the mercy of God, he would be dead. That should speak a lot to a man. That
Right,
should that
right.
should humble a man. Any normal human being would say, "Thank you, Lord. How can I live for you?" And the Bible says deliverances from death come from the Lord.
Hmm.
So I chalk it up as God's hand sparing his life. As to
Hmm.
what end, I don't know. I am not a Trump supporter. I am totally opposed to violence
Hmm.
and political violence, and all of us should be. None of us should be rejoicing that he got hurt, and none of us should be saying, "Oh man, why didn't he succeed? It would have made it." That is obviously for a Christian the wrong way to look at it. Um, we have to condemn all kinds of this violence because like some people are saying, the problem with things like this, it begets copycats. Other people say, "Oh, if he could do it," and like they said in the movie The Godfather, in this country you can kill anybody, if you're willing to pay the price for it. you
Right.
know
And the price is your own life,
that's right.
what you're really saying.
That's right. So I don't
So
think that young man expected to walk away from there alive.
yeah, I can't even comprehend what a 20-year-old was thinking.
Hmm.
And with what you just said, that you don't even think that maybe this young person thought he was going to walk away alive. What was he thinking in his mind, saying today's my last day? Because
Hmm.
according to the reports, he went out and purchased 50 rounds of
Hmm.
ammunition. What's
Hmm.
50? What is 50 rounds of ammunition? Explain that to me. 50
50,
boxes
no, 50 bullets.
of,
And
okay, so
usually
rounds of
usually
bullets.
50 rounds can come in one case. Okay. So but if that marksman, that Secret Service marksman had not
Yeah,
taken him out,
yeah.
he could still have killed Trump. And one who would be at fault for getting killed would be Donald Trump himself.
Mm.
Because you notice, instead of allowing the Secret Service just to keep him covered and get him out of there, he
Yes,
wanted to stand up and give a
yes,
salute to the crowd.
yes.
And for the Secret Service, that was probably really terrifying because he's the guy they're trying to protect.
Right.
And here he keeps pulling and putting himself up as a target. He could not have known that his assailant had been killed. He could
Hmm.
not have known that the bullets would stop coming. But if he had
Hmm.
had the ability, that AR-15, if he had had a clip loaded and could have kept shooting, when he stood up, he would have got him. You know, and I'm really sorry for the fireman, the gentleman who was killed. You know, there at a rally, just an innocent person cheering on his candidate, and it cost him his life. Um, but we all need to be one. We all need to be praying for our political process. We ought to pray for deliverance from hatred and violence. And any of us who are Christians should get out of our mouths any hatred that would be an incentive to anybody else to say, hurt this person, kill this person. you know,
The-
go ahead.
Manny, I was actually driving into the church on Saturday evening, listening to Donald Trump speak. I remember when he got up to speak, it was about 7 minutes, and then the shots rang out. So at first, I said something's wrong with my radio because I thought that everything went out, but
Mm-hmm.
I could still hear sound in the background that sounded like this that people was beginning to scream, and I heard the pow pow pow. I heard the
Mm-hmm.
shot,
Yeah.
and I when I heard the shot, I first said, "Is those firecrackers?" And I said, "No," because it's taking too long
Mm.
for Donald Trump or the technicians to fix the sound. I knew, and I don't normally talk like this, but I'll talk this way to you. Um, I knew something was going to happen. I couldn't say that I knew that it was going to happen on Saturday, but I
Mm-hmm.
knew something was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that there was going to be an attempt to stop Donald Trump from ascending to the
Mm-hmm.
position of president for a second time.
Mm-hmm.
Because once President Biden started going through his emotional changes, um, they people didn't see him as the one that was going to win the race that Donald Trump was going to win. So people decided to take matters into their own hand. But
Mm-hmm.
are you comfortable thinking and believing that this 20-year-old acted completely on his own without any influence from any outside forces at all?
Oh yeah. I mean, this is America. Any one of us could be an assassin. Any one of us could take matters into our own. That's the way we think.
Mhm.
You know, we are a society of individuals. This is culturally, and they have done tests about this. America is the most individualistic society in the world. And every one of us thinks secretly we could do a better job than the president.
Mhm.
You know, it's just ridiculous. We have very little, you know, now it's different. Like black folks and white folks are a little bit different in this regard. African Americans are more connected. They have more solidarity with the community than white people do.
Mhm.
Uh, Latinos are a lot more about the familia, about the community than white people are. But no, I don't have any problem thinking this is a lone wolf, that he
Mhm.
acted independently. I mean, Pennsylvania has lots of rifles, lots of guns.
Mhm.
It's a hunting state.
Mhm.
Evidently, he owned this rifle, that family, they had it for like 12 years.
Right.
So it wasn't an impulsive act as far as going to buy the weapon. But evidently he's always had use of this weapon and had access to it. So no, I don't have any problem with him acting as an individual. That's what makes America kind of scary, you know.
Mhm. Mhm. So, so you can't, of course, we don't know. You can't conceive of somebody planting this thought in his mind or building him up because he had been bullied in school, they said, when he was in high school, and said someone's planted this thought in his mind, and as a 20-year-old, he acted on it. In your mind, you can conceive of this person being so emotionally troubled that they could have acted on their own.
Well, it certainly fits the pattern of a lot of school shooters, you know, who
Mm.
uh, get access to their parents' weapons or whatever, and then they look back and they say, "Oh, he was bullied in school."
Hmm.
That doesn't take away his individual ability to say, I'm going to show you that I'm a powerful person."
Hmm.
And you know, weapons are the great equalizer. You know,
Hmm.
I was just thinking the other day about, you know, when I was in high school, we had a guy in our neighborhood who could really insult you. You know, I don't know how they refer to it in Boston. Down in Newark, we would call it hiking. Some people call it cracking.
Hmm.
Some people call it running the numbers.
Hmm.
But especially in the black community, there were people who, and some of our comedians, when they were growing up, like Chris Rock and people like that, they had the ability, Eddie Murphy, to go off on people and make fun, talk about their mama. And, we had a guy in our neighborhood who went into show business later on, but he get on the public bus, if he started talking about you, your family, your mama,
hmm
I
hmm
mean, the whole bus would be laughing, you
hmm
know, and the person who was being talked about might even be so angry and they start crying. I don't think you can do that today
Yeah.
because somebody's going to go get a gun.
hmm
And
hmm
when we were teenagers, somebody's mouth could take over a bus. But today, you talk like that, there's going to be payback. You diss
hmm
somebody, you mock them. The gun is the equalizer, and it's a terrible thing that you'd answer words with bullets.
And so two other questions. At 20 years old, you can go into a gun store or a store and purchase bullets at age 20.
Well, usually it's age 18, but some states are trying to change it to 21.
hmm
But yeah, in gun states, in weapon states, it's not so hard. In fact, down south, they're talking about putting up vending machines for
I
ammunition.
saw that. Randy, I saw that. I said, oh
Yeah.
my gosh. So on Sunday, I was scheduled to preach, and we had an incident in this church where one of our leaders who went to the pulpit to pray on behalf of the congregation collapsed in the pulpit.
Oh, sorry.
And so two of us, three people ran up to the pulpit and grabbed her arm on one side, her arm on the other side to keep her from hitting the floor.
Mm,
And we eventually, the whole congregation was watching this, and we eventually walked the person off to the side and sat them down. And then somehow she had this person left where they were. They went to another microphone and they were apologizing and explaining to the congregation what had happened, and then had another incident. So it was, the service was already, um, I was struggling
mm,
already because of the shooting, and I wanted us to make sure that we prayed for the president, the former
mm.
president, what's going on. And I was going to do it just before I spoke, and I decided not to preach on Sunday. I broke the congregation up into three separate groups, two in the sanctuary and one in another room. And I said, we're going to pray during the time that I would be preaching. We're going to pray in three separate groups, and people did it. They were praying. They were praying
Mm,
about what happened to former President Donald Trump, and pray for elected officials.
mm.
The church did what it does so well. And then after that, people were released to go home. I didn't hear any complaints. Oh, I didn't receive my sermon this morning.
Mm.
Uh, did did was anything did anybody pray for what's happening in our country at your church on Sunday? Did you change anything up?
Well, I was a guest preacher on Sunday at
Oh,
a Native American church
okay.
here in our area. They had
hmm
asked me to come. The pastor was out of town, and yes, one of the elders there did pray for the former President Trump in our country. Um, but I did preach. But God bless your church. God bless your people. I'm so glad that they took it seriously and called on the Lord. And I think all of us need to be doing that.
Yeah.
Uh, this is a very. Let me say this too. What happened to Donald Trump? And this is people can be angry at me saying this, and it might be too close to the incident. But
hmm
some of this is his fault.
hmm
And when I say that, I don't mean he had anything to do with trying to set this up. You
Right.
know, no, this was a straight on. This guy, this lone wolf, went after to kill Trump. But Trump has been an inciter of violence.
Mhm.
His rhetoric has been mean. It's been nasty. He's an attack agent. You know, all this thing about what happened in the Capitol on January 6th, a couple of years ago, it's
Yep.
all because of him. And now the chickens come home to roost.
Mhm.
Okay. You talk, basically, he is the one who has tried to weaponize the government against his opponents. And yet he accuses the Democrats. Everything he accuses somebody else of doing, he's usually done himself.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
would say that, I remember when George Wallace was shot. I don't know if, you're old enough
I
to
remember
remember that.
that. Yeah.
And he was paralyzed for the rest of his life.
Right.
But,
And he
but,
changed. His life changed, right?
well, it had to. But, he was an attack agent. He was a
Yes.
segregationist and he was
Yes.
mean. And, you present that as a way of life and you said, it's okay to be this way. It's
Mhm.
okay to denounce your enemies. It's okay to
Mhm.
humiliate them and mock them. It's okay to say, we're going to get even, which Trump has said, you know.
Mhm.
And so I think, you need to be careful. What goes around comes around, as they say.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
you talk like this, people say, okay, if you can do it, I can do it.
Mhm.
And I'm going to do it. And
Mhm.
God forbid, we Christians have to stand against both that kind of rhetoric that
Mhm.
comes out of somebody like Donald Trump and from the opposition who says we're going to be violent too. That is not for God's people.
And President Biden was interviewed, I believe, yesterday, and he was asked about some of the comments that he has made in the past about putting a bullseye on the former president. And he was saying, he had mentioned having him in the crosshairs, and he was explaining what he was saying, but he apologized for the language. And it's going to be interesting. I think that the former president is speaking on Thursday. It's going to be interesting to see if there is any change in
Mm-hmm.
his tone and what he has to say. Marjorie is it Green, Marjorie Green. She
Marjorie Taylor
spoke.
Greene.
She spoke on last night, and her rhetoric was still the same. It had not been altered or changed. Now, let me ask you one last question about the rifle. Um, they're saying that the rifle belonged to his father, the 20-year-old's father.
Yeah.
It wasn't the 20-year old. So is there some obligation to having your weapons locked up, or you don't have to do that as a license owner?
Actually, you don't have to. There is no law that I know of
Okay.
that says to a family, if you have weapons in your home, you have to have them locked up. It makes
Yeah.
sense. I have a gun safe. My rifles are in that gun safe.
Okay.
Uh, if my sons, any of my kids, could have found where my keys were and gone and taken one of those rifles out. I trained, especially my older sons. I took them out when they were about 10 years old to teach them gun
Yeah.
safety, teach them how
Yeah.
to fire a rifle. But a lot of people have weapons in their home. They keep under their pillow. They pistols they keep in the bedside, right next to them. And some of them, their grandkids or their little kids wind up killing themselves or somebody, or even their own parents,
Right.
because they get a hold of that weapon. Gun safety
Right.
is so important. But once your kids grow up to be 20 years old, you don't worry about that so much because I'm sure this father took his son out many times and practiced with this rifle. You know, he probably trusted him implicitly. He said, okay, I've taught you gun safety. You don't take this out. But that doesn't keep an individual from planning in his head, I'm going to take
Yeah.
my father's weapon,
Yeah.
you know, unknowns to his father and sneak it out of the house. That could happen within a 24-hour period. He could go from a peaceful person nobody ever had any trouble with to a killer. God forbid.
Yeah. Yeah, God forbid. And none of us would want our families or any of our children to have done this because um, people who live in the neighborhood where this young person lived, one person said, I've seen him over 20 times, but we've never spoken. And the people who live across the street and around the corner or
Mm-hmm.
next to them, who knew this young man, never really saw that type of temperament.
Yeah.
So a person could be perfect in every conceivable way
Mm-hmm.
and just have one bad day
Mm-hmm.
when something speaks to them,
Mm-hmm.
or they're speaking to themselves, or they're just acting on an impulse
Yeah.
and destroys not their life alone,
Right.
but now that entire family. I don't know how many siblings there were in the family,
Mm.
but the parents now have got to bear the brunt of the aftermath because they've
Yeah.
decided
Yeah.
that they're not going to file a case against the father because it was his gun. And you're right. I guess I'm saying that there's no law uh, that says that you have to have your guns put away under lock and key. That's just
Mm-hmm.
something that families will do to protect their families. Is that what you're
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
saying?
That's what I'm saying. And,
Wow.
I don't think there'll be any case against his parents.
No.
This kid was not in high school. He didn't shoot in the school. He's an adult. I mean, 20-year-olds make up the bulk of our military. You know, you join the military at 18.
Yeah.
We give those kids incredible firepower. And so there's nothing crazy about a 20-year-old having access to a rifle and knowing how to use it. What, and here, one of the things that's interesting, a lot of times we have these shootings and the press goes to the neighborhood where the person grew up
Yes.
and they said, did you know him? Well, I never spoke to him, like you just
Yeah.
quote. That is so typically American
Hmm.
because just because you live in a neighborhood doesn't mean that's your community.
Hmm.
Your community is who your friends are.
Hmm.
If you have no friends, you really have no community.
Hmm.
And so in America, usually our relationships are built around where we go to school, our jobs, where we work, or some particular interest that we might have. So we might get with a group of people who say like to go camping or who are runners or like to, sports of some kind. That becomes our posse. That becomes our community. They know us. They know how we think. But hardly ever do the people who live on our street know what we
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. 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 I was thinking the other day, and you participated in, I think, two of them, where we had a day of fasting and praying.
Mm,
And I've had people from around the country who will call into the studio and pray for 15 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And we did
mm-hmm,
that throughout the day. And I think it's time for us to do another one of those, number one. Number two, I'm also thinking about having part two of the active shooter in a church series that we had um, maybe 8 or 9 months ago, where the law enforcement community came into our church. We invited other pastors and folk in the community,
mm-hmm,
and we had a very, very informative teaching
mm,
on how do you function when there's an active shooter
mm-hmm,
in your church. Now, the first one was how do you, what do they say, run, hide, or fight. There's three
mm-hmm,
points to it.
mm-hmm,
There's a second phase of this. I didn't know there was a second phase. And the second phase was what do you do if somebody is shot, and they teach you how to handle that person. The city emergency technicians, they do the second phase. So we're thinking about having a second phase
mm-hmm.
for our church because we think it's important, uh, at least being in a Black community, being in a predominantly Black neighborhood where
Mm-hmm.
there is some shooting, some death and destruction, that the churches need to be prepared.
Yeah.
Have has your church ever thought about anything like that? this church or your former church? Was
Those
there a
are
need back then?
those are good questions. And you know, we've had both of the congregations I've been a part of have a safety plan
Safety plan.
where
Okay.
they've worked with the deacons, not just about shooting, but things like tornadoes, fire. Um, but and I remember one time one of the tutors for my children in math, his aunt was killed with in Dr. King's church in Atlanta. Their relative was there when the gunman walked in and shot and killed. Was it Dr. King's mother?
Yes, she was on the organ playing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there was another person shot, and that was the auntie or the uncle of my kid's math teacher. And you know, it's
Hmm.
interesting. Oh my gosh, you know, somebody that close with that kind of thing. But um, yeah, we've had safety plans, but what you're talking about is really a good idea because you know, when I was in the Army, I went to the Combat Lifesavers course, which basically taught us how to give another soldier an IV,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And so we had to be you know, I had somebody stick me 5 or 6 times trying to find my vein.
Wow.
And then I got revenge. I was able to then work on his arm,
It,
but
it,
I
it
did
took
it
you,
one
it took
time.
you, I was going to say, it took you 10 times on the other person's arm, right?
I should have. I wanted to. Uh, but basically, the people who are really crucial to saving somebody's life
Yeah.
are the people right next to you. You know, if it's, hey, call 911, which is a good thing to do. But
Yeah.
if you don't do any help for them, and so like even today, you'll see a lot of police shootings where the policeman will actually shoot a guy and keep shooting him until he's no longer moving. And then he'll put his gloves on and say, I want to help you. And
Yeah.
so after
Yeah. Yeah.
shooting the guy, then he starts doing CPR. But he waits a long time because he doesn't want to get shot himself. But if you are with somebody in your church and they are shot or they are hurt, the speed at which you are able to render aid could
Yeah.
result in saving their life. So that's a
Right.
really good thing you're going to do.
Right. 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 Karen has now joined us. Karen, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yep.
Hey,
Uh,
sister,
Hey, Randy. Randy. How
wonderful
are
to
you?
see you.
Good to see you too. How's Joan?
Oh, she suffers from living with me, but she's okay.
Tell her my prayers are with her. So, I just wanted to jump into you all's conversation a bit and ask this question about what I believe is like the hijacking of Christianity and
Mm,
Christian nationalism. And it's amazing to me because I mean, looking in the face of the crowd the other day on Saturday, um, I can't say. I mean, maybe there were evil people there, but I can't say that I thought anybody was particularly evil. They just believe what they believe,
mhm,
and he's the embodiment of it, and it's so twisted. But
mhm,
what does that say about us that we could be so easily like have our faith so easily hijacked
mhm.
into this like just perverted sense of what Christianity is.
Karen, tell us a little bit more about what you mean about Christian nationalism. How would you describe it?
Well, I wouldn't describe it any particular way. I take it from those who have been interviewed and described themselves as Christian nationalists.
Okay.
And they kind of have this America first. America was founded as a Christian nation,
Mhm,
and Donald Trump is going to bring it back for us. This will be a Christian nation. You know,
mhm,
the Ten Commandments will be in every school again. There'll be prayer in school again. Abortion will be outlawed.
mhm.
So, I mean, that's what I've heard out of their mouths.
Okay. Yeah, I think that you know that's pretty much on target. But I think there's a lot of a mixture of
Hmm.
theology and patriotism.
Yeah.
You know, Tom Skinner used to talk about taking Jesus and wrapping him in the American flag.
Right.
And, you know, to me, that was a graphic picture of, oh gosh, this is what people do. And, you know, the people, I've talked to people who really, they seem to equate Israel with America. They take all the promises given to Israel
Yeah.
in the Old Testament and say, okay, yeah, this is fulfilled in the United States. And the funny thing is, you know, you never really see the United States in the Bible at all. You know, I mean, not as an idea, not as a geography. It's
Right.
not there. And some people say, oh, no, it's there in Revelation when we talk about the nations. But, you know, what people do who are Christian nationalists is they equate Israel with the United States, or the only reason for the United States to exist is to protect the nation of Israel.
Mm.
So, you know, some of the biggest cheerleaders for Israel are in the evangelical community in the United States.
Mm.
Now, I'm not against Israel. I love Jewish people and I love the nation of Israel, but I'm also able to critique both Israel and the United States when they act unjustly,
Mm-hmm.
which secular governments do at times. They act unjustly or
Right.
unjustly. And we have, as God's people who know the word, we've got to speak the truth to power in those situations. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people in this country who are having all kinds of prophetic visions and dreams about what they think America ought to do or should be. Now, I'm sure you both agree with me. I would like America to be better
Mm-hmm.
in every situation. I'd
Right.
like every neighborhood to be better. I would like
Right.
every school to be better. I'd like every local government, state government, and federal government to be better. And what I mean by that is more just, more merciful, more equitable, not harsh, not destroying people's lives. Would I love everybody in this country to be a Christian? Yes. I would love them all to know Jesus and all
Right.
to be forgiven of their sins.
Right.
I don't have any right to impose that on anybody. That has to come by the grace of God as he converts people, not me.
Mm-hmm.
But when you become militant, when
Right.
you take patriotism and blend it with religion and say, I have a God-given right to do this, you can become dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And that has certainly happened all around the world in what we call Islamic fundamentalism. Anybody, I mean, you can have all kinds of reasons to be violent. But yeah, Christian nationalism is a problem. And it is something, you know, it's always a struggle. You know, like I would consider myself a patriot. I served in the military. I love my country, but I'm not a Christian nationalist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Christian first. And Jesus has died for me. He's claimed me. I belong to him first.
So, I mean, I agree with what you said, everything you said. Un For me, unfortunately, I'm not even speaking for Bruce. For me, as a Black woman in America, I don't love America. I tolerate living here because I live here. Um, I would not consider myself a patriot based on the way America has dealt with Black folks and other marginalized people. I'm a citizen, you know, I obey the laws. I I'm a Christian first. I would definitely say that. I'm a citizen. I obey the laws, and I tolerate living in this country. And again, I'm not speaking for Bruce. That's just me. He probably doesn't even feel that way. But my thought is more like, where are the Christians in speaking up and distinguishing ourselves from this Christian nationalism?
Mm-hmm.
Because outsiders look at this and we're all lumped together.
Mm.
They don't know that there's dissent within the quote unquote Christian ranks,
Mm-hmm.
that I am not, well, they don't, I mean, not too many people think Black folks are Christian nationalists. But I suppose there are some.
Oh,
And then,
yeah, there are.
and then the other thing is my last comment and this is just a comment, it's not really much else. I have a visceral reaction seeing Black people support him and Black politicians, what I call just displaying outright coonery for this, as if seeing what he has done to other people, do you really think you're going to be the exception? He does not care about anyone but himself, and he has thrown plenty of others under the bus.
Yeah.
So why do these people continue to support him and mimic what he tells them to say and actually think somehow he's going to treat them differently? He has shown you who he is.
Well, I believe in demons, and I believe in demonic deception. I mean, I do think that happens in at every level, individually, families, communities, nations. And I have said to people that I think that's what's happening with the Donald Trump movement. I think there is demonic deception, and where all of a sudden you excuse somebody standing right in front of you. Like you said, he's thrown all kinds of people under the bus. Why would you risk that kind of a relationship? Why would you entrust yourself to somebody that you have seen just absolutely turn, even on his own vice president? You know, how dangerous is it to be close to somebody like that? And but yet they do it. Why did they do it? Why would they, or do they say, well, he's different privately than he is publicly? You know, I mean, obviously, Trump has the ability to immediately forgive somebody, like his vice president choice, J.D. Vance, was a critic of Trump.
You
know, and then he's called a convert. You know, now he's obviously in favor of Trump. Does J.D. Vance not know what happened to the last vice president?
Right.
You know.
So I mean,
we have 1 minute left, so I'm shocked.
Oh, okay. Never mind. You guys enjoy the 1 minute. I'm off.
Bye, sister.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So Randy, it would be interesting because I'm receiving other calls coming in. It would be interesting to open this up to give, not today, but to give people a chance to talk with us about some of these views and opinions. Karen has been